I often reflect on this idea that when you have what you need, you're wealthy. And people very often don't quite understand that. Or you can also realize that being wealthy isn't the most important thing. Having what you need is. So therefore, there's this old Chinese proverb about if you want to be rich, lower your standards. And so if you find that you don't have what you think you need at the time, and even if you've acclimated yourself to this idea and become very comfortable with the idea that, well, I have what I need. I may not be living in opulence and a palace and all that, but I have what I need. So you got that down. But then for whatever reason, whatever circumstance, you might find you don't have something you need. But you can remember then that if you want to be wealthy, you lower your standards. And so the idea is obviously, of course, to learn how to be grateful for what we have and how to be comfortable with it and how not to let the having or not having of some material thing, and material can affect a lot of things. We'll be talking about that tonight. What is material and what is consciousness? So we are, invited to consider the transitoriness of life ever more these days. And I'm going to take a look. I'm going to try to, let's see. Oops, I'm going to need host sharing. That's what I'm going to need. Screen sharing actually is what I'm going to need. Let me see if I can do it. So I'm going to need screen sharing capabilities here. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at something that I included a little bit in, oops, get rid of that, in the blog. So I'm going to click over to that in a moment so that you can see it as well. And the purpose of clicking onto this bit of imagery, and hopefully you can see this screen. I'm going to assume you can unless I get informed that you can't. What we're going to look at here, and if you're not seeing this, I know that the producer will let me know, and I'll assume that you are absent that correction. We are looking at storms and flooding in Italy. We're looking at things that have been going on very recently. So we talk about the transitoriness of life and the material world. Well, my goodness, if we're not to focus on the material world, what are we to focus on? Well, of course, we have to give due attention to this material world and all of its manifestations. But as Billy Meyer has said, the meaning of life is the evolution of consciousness. Now, if any of the folks in this video could hear that, they'd probably say, easy for you to say. We're being flooded out. Our homes are being blown away. Our businesses are destroyed. The roads, the infrastructure here, this is all, I believe, just about all of it's from Sicily. And of course, human beings, when they are in the presence of or confronted by phenomena of any sort, especially hyper-realistic, they pull out their cell phones. And I guess we could be grateful now, since these folks, unlikely that they were sitting around with, high-quality movie cameras waiting to film something to put it on the news. And however they look at this, I mean, you see that this is an extreme situation as far as those of us in the world who are not facing it. And yet, what is the point of showing this? Well, one of the points of showing it is to say that this is somewhere that is the present reality for people who, before this phenomenon descended upon them, were not experiencing this. Now, were they warned about it? Was there any warning possible for this? We're not speaking right now actually about an earthquake. We're speaking about phenomenal storms, the sea coming in and flowing over everything. We saw footage like this in the past when those terrible tsunamis were, coming through Indonesia and Japan and all. So here we are in Sicily, and people are just finding everything being blown around and destroyed. Just watch this. You'll see trees being blown right out of the ground. Now, we have been warned for decades by a man named Billy Meyer. He started publishing most of his environmental warnings, not all, but most of them, in 1951. And he spoke about the increased frequency and intensity of all forms of storms and floods, blizzards, as well as the earthquakes and seaquakes that would be befalling our world and its inhabitants, humankind and all creatures. And it's true that there it is, a tree being literally uprooted by the winds. Another one will go in a moment. There it is. It's true that the majority of the world never get a chance to read those. Or we could say also that many people who had the chance weren't interested, neglected, dismissed, laughed at, scoffed about. The increased frequency and intensity, look at this, here it goes, of storms, floods, blizzards, hurricanes, etc. So why would we dwell on, why would we play this video for a while? Because this scene or comparable scenes and events are going to become ever more common and ubiquitous. They are going to be taking place, not just somewhere else, not just over there to those people. That could be, okay, it's Sicily, it could be Southern California at a certain point, couldn't it? Northern California, Oregon. The winds. Meyer had specifically written a number of times about the winds and how damaging, how massive in terms of, look at this is clocking the speeds of the winds here. So people are resilient. They endure, they carry on. Here's an example of that. Yeah. People driving while things are flooding, buses, trains, cars, what have you. And if we start speaking about not getting too attached to one's circumstances in the material world here, I guess this would be, I could put on the soundtrack, but it isn't pleasant music. I mean, we have this illustration, and I choose to let it run for a while because I have a feeling we're going to be seeing and reporting on, and maybe viewing together, many different manifestations of things. Let's also remember the volcano in Iceland. That has been predicted to blow by Billy Meyer for several decades, and more recently, another passing reference to it. We know that, look at these. We know that the earthquakes in Italy have occurred that were forewarned of in 1948 by Svath, and that they are the precursors to the eruptions. More stuff coming down. Precursors to the eruptions of 5 major volcanoes. Mount Etna just became active again the other day. Campi Flegrei has become active, and that is going to be, that's a caldera that would, when that goes, it could damage huge parts of Italy, even parts could go in the sea. Other countries, 5 other countries will be affected ultimately. But these are abstract things to us for the most part. Do you think that all those brilliant scientists and people who pontificate online and all the online experts who they consider themselves alternative media, do you think that they've bothered to put 2 and 2 together? That they've bothered to really vet Meyer's information? To know how impeccably accurate those prophecies and predictions are? Those predictions gained through time travel by Billy Meyer with his friends, the Plejaren, hauling him around through time and space. So when they tell us that specific volcanoes will erupt and earthquakes will appear here and there, and certain countries will be affected all the more by storms and this and that, well, okay, I think we're pretty much at the end of that, fortunately, probably. Do we want to pay attention? Do we now want to be among those people who say, hey, wait a minute, that's some pretty serious stuff, right? Folks here underneath a UFO, photographs taken in 1976. Nobody saw the craft. It was there. There's this whole series of these photos. And we think about this. These people, Billy Meyer comes out to take a photo. This is the UFO report, so I got to say something about UFOs, right? So he comes out with a camera, gives it to somebody. The guy loads it with film. Billy takes these photos, tells people, oh, move over here, move over there. And then after they're done, he gives the guy the camera. The guy takes the film and goes, puts it in for development. Nobody saw it. And it wasn't about this, that these contacts have been taking place for all these years. No, it's really about us and our future survival. And before the show, I opened up a book. I opened up the book that I advertised with the show tonight. See if I can even possibly, oh gosh, so The Way to Live. Here it is. It's The Way to Live. And trying to see what page was that on. Who can see? It's dark in here. I think it was on 228. And I decided I would open this book tonight. Not that I would try and read it on the air because it's tiny tab and it strains my eyes. And you can read the book for yourself, of course. But I thought, whatever it is, I'm going to open it up and I'm going, wow, this is Billy's talking about what happens when you die, the spirit form and the consciousness. This goes here and that goes there. And he talks about the transitoriness of the material life and how, while we should make ourselves as reasonably comfortable as we can, we have to keep this transitoriness in mind all the time. We don't know when our exit from this time and space takes place. We being the essence of us, the spirit form, the consciousness, when these parts of us that are not this flesh and blood depart and move into their realm, so that in due time there is the reincarnation of the spirit and the formation of the new personality in a new body with a new life, in which we like to say we, because we relate everything to our personalities and egos, in which we don't exist in the same way. We certainly don't remember our past we or any of this stuff. That isn't given to us, if you will, available to us until very, very much farther into our evolution, in terms of millions of years, no doubt, that we needn't worry about it. So why bring all this transitory stuff up? Well, this is a great part of the message. We are to focus more and more on the consciousness, on the creation energy, formerly called the spirit, and the creation energy teaching. And the books illustrated behind me, these are some of Billy's 60 plus books. There's about 10 or so in which we have the English language. The book has English on one page. Again, this is often futile to hold them up. Okay. English on one side, facing the left-hand side is the German original. So this book, The Way to Live, embodies a lot of different aspects of the way to live. It doesn't talk about how to amass things. It acknowledges, or within the book is the acknowledgement of the reasonable needs. And there's something else. I'll use a word in a little bit because it'll be appropriate to our conversation with our guest, William, which will be coming up in a few minutes. So can you imagine, if you're not familiar yet with Billy's books, can you imagine, let's just say 10 books in which there's 100, 200 pages, that is a book that has all of this material in it about the way to live. So it isn't just about, well, get ready because you're going to get out of here at some point and you never know when. It's all that and much, much more. It's the dimension of consciousness, of thinking, of life, of what this is that goes far beyond any of the philosophies and the belief systems, the very primitive, fear-inducing, et cetera, religions that don't have the answers. And for those people who have felt at some point, maybe early on in life, maybe, sometimes in childhood, sometimes late adolescence, teenage years, young adulthood, et cetera, start to ask questions within ourselves about the meaning of life. What is this about? What do we do, et cetera? What is it? And we find that those things, for most people who've grown up until this time in history right now, that which has been available has mainly been based on belief. Now, there have been philosophers, great philosophers, who've had pieces that are certainly reflective of the teaching. It's not like nobody ever has any of this. But we find that the more we read this content, the creation energy teaching, the more we study Meyer's work, and his work in many cases is the work of bringing forward this teaching without claiming the authorship of it. I won't go too far into that, but because Billy also does claim authorship for certain works. So at every turn in books like the book we spoke a little bit about maybe last time, Rebirth, Death, Dying, Grieving, Sorrow, etc., this whole thing is largely taboo to speak about in our societies unless it's done within the context very often of a religious thing or a mourning, a grief, an expression, a recognition of the passing of a prominent or so-called important person. We don't look at this because it's uncomfortable, the uncertainty. And that's because the truth, which has been brought forward by Meyer and the previous prophets in this lineage over a period of like 13,500 years, it's all been pretty much suppressed. And where it's not suppressed, it's ridiculed, attacked, dismissed. And nowadays, of course, with all of the attention and need for instant gratification and consumption, including of information that's done all the time, without digestion, without realization, without cognition, without contemplation, we simply keep grabbing for more and more. Well, there are things in life. Maybe you're not trapped in a storm, a tsunami, or a flood, a situation such as we saw in Sicily. Maybe most of us right now, are not living at the foot of a dormant and rumbling volcano as people in Iceland, I guess many of whom have been evacuated. I'm not sure if all of them in the area, or the people in Italy, many of whom remain living close to places like Campi Flegrei, Mount Etna, Mount Vesuvius, Mount Marcelli. We are inevitably going to find the events of life come closer in these kinds of manifestations. In some places, it'll be more civil unrest, or international unrest. But these are the times, and the times are fulfilling. The people were warned, and did they listen? Of course not. But that's been the story throughout history. And Meyer's known this, and the Play Iron have known it, but they've given over, 75, how many years has Billy been doing this? Really close to like 80 years, 81 years since a boy of 5, to bring the warnings forward to us, because this is not just like, hey, there's a storm coming. This is more about human beings have set in motion the conditions for many, many, many of these events, some tied to what we call, natural phenomena, an earthquake, a volcanic eruption, but even some of those, they have been very clear about saying your overpopulation, your overbuilding of your cities, your damming of waters, your mining of ores and sucking the oil out of the ground, you are going to pay the price. Humankind will pay the price. And when the price, the bill starts to come due, it will be paid over a long period of time. And what life will look like in the future, even in the near future, it will be different on an ongoing basis. The normalcy bias, which has kept us hypnotized. Well, it hasn't happened here. It can't happen here. That only happens over there. However we, conceptualize these things, that is all a thing of the past. And this isn't about doom and gloom. It's about the way to live. So, we have a guest tonight. And guest is a fellow named William Colvard. And I put a link to William's site in the blog, True Peace Apparel. And William and us, we here, have been in touch over the period of, I don't know, over the past year, shall we say, for certain reasons. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to bring William on here. And look at that, just like magic. So there's William. There we go. That's the upright peace symbol, the True Peace Apparel peace symbol. Okay, thank you. There we go. There it is. And while we could speak quite a bit about the peace symbol, and we may speak more about it, of course, one of the reasons I, wanted William to come on was to speak about things that have been occurring in his life in this, past year. And what I would start out in terms of asking, hi, saying, howdy, William, how you doing?
Hello.
Tell us a little bit about you. Yeah, there you go. Give us a little background in terms of who you are, what kind of a life you've lived up until certain events occurred and all
Sure.
that, and then we'll get into some juicy stuff.
Surely. Excuse me. Forgive me.
You need some of this water here. No?
Some water. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate
You're
it.
welcome. Thank you.
Yeah. So, yeah, my name is William Colbert. I found a case back in 2006 on a site called stumbleupon.com. It just shows random videos on my laptop. And at the time, I lived in Huntington Valley. Before that, I lived over in Voorhees, New Jersey, next to Cherry Hill, New Jersey, if anyone's familiar. And yeah, I was a firefighter there, volunteer, and literally grew up there, had an amazing childhood. And yeah, sadly, there was family who was getting older and was getting senile, and no one wanted to kind of move, so we decided. And so I gave up the fireman's career and moved over and took care of my grandmother. Unfortunately, we didn't see that not long after my mother started getting sick. So, yeah, sadly, I had to take care of both of them at the same time. I did run ambulance here privately in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia. And yeah, sadly, they eventually, my grandmother passed away, and then I still had to deal with my mother. She had emphysema, COPD, so that was a tough one to watch. I just wish certain technologies was around when, when she was kind of getting sick. So she passes away on June 1st, 2010. At this point, I've been around the case for about 4 years. Um, Already was convinced to a T. I was very meticulous with the videos and the film, realizing even on the first video watch um, that it was concrete from how the crafts were going around the tree, not just swinging left and right. Uh, they would need a tether as taut as an uh, a suspension bridge for that type of movement to be. And I'm sorry, not with that 8mm film. You can't erase that type of stuff. I don't care if you have a multi-million-dollar studio; it's not happening.
So, let me ask you something right there.
Yeah,
For those who don't know, you're speaking now about you're finding Billy Meyer's material, uh,
correct.
videos, and had you seen any of his books at that time, or is this you first
My
came in touch with the video?
my first book I picked up was the Talmud Emmanuel, version four. Version four was the first one I picked up. This was 2006 and 7 when the Silent Revolution of Truth first came out. My mother did have the opportunity to watch that. I was very happy to see that. She she was a good woman. Anyway, yeah, everything just seemed very much in line with what I remember as a child. You touched on apparently having certain thoughts as an adolescent about life and things of that sort. I had the recollection at 2 years old of, my goodness, I have another chance at life. It happened. It was very real. I was in the living room on Tudor Street in Philadelphia. It was a clear day. TV was to my left, the couch was to my right, and I was in a very heavy, angry mood. You won't find any photos of me smiling as a baby. I was angry, apparently from a previous life. Yeah. Um, well, I walked in the middle of the living room, and it was a eureka. It was one of the, and you don't have eureka moments. You know what I mean? I said, my goodness, I have another chance. And all the weight fell off of my shoulders like a ton of bricks. Now, I don't know at that point, I didn't think, oh my gosh, it's another life. All I knew was, wow, this was very, very important. This was very profound. I need to remember this somehow. So what I did, I looked over my right shoulder, and then it was a little uncomfortable. And I looked over my left shoulder at the exact point and step of where I had that moment. I literally welded it into my brain. Every couple of years, I would try to go back to that moment.
You said you were
And
two
then
years.
I was
Did you
two
say
years
you were
old.
two?
Yes.
Okay.
I know it sounds weird. You're not really, not a lot of people have memories at that time. Sadly, I had a very abrasive beginning. Sadly, I had a father who was pretty violent. Um, Another story, you know what I mean? But there was
Mhm.
memories that kind of instilled in me, sadly, but everybody has a story, you know what I mean? Especially these days. Um, but moving forward, I went the first time I went to church and the first time I went to synagogue. I remember wanting the conversation. The first time I was in third grade, I was at a day camp. I was like, I'm finally going to be able to have the question of, what did I experience? And they dismissed it. I'll never forget it. And I was so angry with them. I was like, no, this was not the work of anything except life itself. Don't tell me it was a devil or someone trying to stop it. Spare me. Please spare me. You're saying I didn't have the memory that I had. You know what I mean? It was my experience. So at a very young age, I kind of dismissed all of that. Then, sure enough, in 2006, and yes, and sadly, it took that long. Um, when it came to that information, we've all had interesting experiences when it comes to lights and things of that sort. Um, First one of mine was in 1998. Uh, Let me backtrack a little bit more. I was a junior firefighter at the time, and my assistant chief, he had an old VHS tape, and it was copied over about 10 different times. And he starts talking to me about aliens. I'm like, okay, and he shows me this piece of metal that this guy crushed in his hand, and he let it go, and it expanded right back to its original position. I was like, oh, wow, yeah, that's cool. But sadly, it didn't stick anywhere in my head for it, in life. I was like, all right, I got to know, what a small pumper is. I got to know, I have a whole bunch of other things to worry about versus what's, going on up in the air. But 1998, fast forwarding, I was 19. My first time I really saw lights. That was something. I was in Atco, New Jersey. And I was there to see something else. Something else happened, and I'll be quick about it. I would go with friends and stuff. I thought we were all going to go see a ghost because there was a trick story to it, And every time I was there, they would freak themselves out. Anyway, moving forward, I finally went by myself, and I was there for about 40 minutes, and then a ball of light that popped up, and it was doing some amazing things. Then that ball of light actually got larger as it was going lower, and I freaked out. I turned my car on, and I just batted out of there. It didn't stick with me. I just chalked it up as an interesting experience. Fast forward to 2006. StumbleUpon.com. Excuse me, my ADD there. In 2006, yes, I saw the 1980s Contact, and very, very, very profound seeing with Wendell Stevens, and just the amazing detailed information that I saw there. I bumped into the audio tapes of Randy Winters, which I know who you know personally, or knew.
Mm-hmm.
And ironically, as I was going through some of this stuff on YouTube, I ended up seeing your face, and then above that was a peace symbol, ironically, on another icon just above. And I said, I wonder what this is about. And you were wearing a gray. I remember you were wearing gray. That's all I recall. Mm-hmm. And ended up picking up, again, the Talmud Emmanuel. I ended up getting the Silent Revolution in Truth in that same order, and went right through it. Moving forward, 2010, Mom passes away. When Mom passed away, June 1st, 2010, I had a pretty amazing experience. I ended up sleeping where she was sleeping on the couch because it still smelled like her. And when I was laying down and I was in a dream, I was in the middle of sleep, I felt something penetrate what I would say, if the dream world was like a dome, it felt more like it pierced through. And it was my mother, mind you, when I'm 24 hours in movement of past, and I heard her scream my name like she was trying to wake me up. She would wake me up every morning. And she would shriek, Belle! And it would go through walls, through your chest, and it would just go. Anyway, I woke up, and I would get up at 5 o'clock every morning to start my day. And sure enough, I didn't think anything of it. I was just getting myself ready as I left. And as I got on the bus, I replayed what happened, and it was very, very powerful to have her wanting to still be a mom on the other side at that moment. And I kind of thought to myself, my gosh, that's not fair to her. And it's go on to your next, don't, you're not here anymore. You know what I mean? It wouldn't be fair to you. The love will never be lost, but you got to evolve as well.
Right.
1 month passes.
Well,
go ahead, sir.
I want to come in on something.
Go.
We may be able to come back to this, and that is because our time is limited, and I want to make sure we cover
I
this.
apologize.
Something happened to you recently,
That's
and
forgive me.
I want no, it's fine. I want you to tell people how that whole circumstance started and take
Yeah.
us through that too.
Okay. So, uh, okay. I was probably 4 miles from where I'm at now. Um, I was having a little bit difficult time breathing. Um, I was living in a place I lived for about 12 years. Um, and it was just after COVID. It was just after COVID, and um, a little over a month after, and I was having difficulty breathing. And I was like, man, it must be just like the dust in the area because I was very close to a laundromat in the household. So I used bleach and I cleaned it all up. A few times I should have let it sit. Probably about a week after when I did it, I realized, my gosh, I wondered if I used too much bleach, let me pull it up because I was living with an elderly couple. Um, they were my roommates, and what I did was I started cleaning up the bleach that was still on the floor, and I just used water. Well, when I originally cleaned it, it was cut with water and bleach, but when it dried, it was all bleach on the ground. So when I hit it with water, the fume came up and smacked me in the face. There was no ventilation anywhere, and I had to clean it up. So it was 40 minutes of dealing with this, but about 10 minutes in, I felt a pop. This pop came after burning. It felt literally like acid was burning onto my lungs, and I immediately left, kicked open the door, was trying to breathe. As I tried, I remember over exhaling, and just the burn feeling was acid indigestion. You couldn't hold a candle to it. It was literally feeling like a hydrochloric acid or something was just being poured in the front of my lungs, and then the heat that literally took over my whole body. It was pretty powerful. Went to multiple hospitals trying to figure out what the heck happened. Um, uh, I wasn't able to inhale properly. This is when I originally contacted you, telling you about. I think I have a hole somewhere regarding. I first I thought it was possibly a clot. I didn't think I was going to be here, and I was more or less saying goodbye to you. Um,
Mhm.
um, I wasn't able to breathe in my household. What I had to do, because the only place I could breathe was outside, and I was lucky enough to live across the street from what's called Pennypack Park. Yes, Philadelphia actually has woods. You wouldn't believe it. Yes, they do. Up in the Northeast region, I actually had to live out there for about 5 months every day, and it was very cold at that time. And to know that there was a warm bed only 10 minutes and walk away, but I couldn't go in because of the air that was there in any part of that house. My whole system got ultra sensitive to the point that I wasn't able to walk into any type of store. I wasn't able to walk into the hospitals because of the fumes of the bleach that were there. Someone would catch a whiff of it and would say, "Oh, well, this place is clean." Me, it would feel like someone was pouring bleach onto my lungs. Um, it was to the point where I was able to know that 18 wheelers were coming before they even came through because of how my lungs were. That's how sensitive they were.
How
I
is that?
dropped
How's that connected? The 18 wheelers and your lungs
the
sensing them.
fumes.
You mean
The
fumes from the
fumes.
car trucks?
That's correct. The fumes were aggravating my breathing. Every time a fume would hit me, my lungs would immediately collapse onto themselves. I wasn't able to take full breaths. My neck. I lost weight, dramatic weight, from 235 pounds to 150, just under in 30 days. And then trying to figure out how was I going to combat this with not being able to go to any type of hospital. And then every time I would try to go to the hospital, the pain was so great that I had to run. out. And they didn't understand that what they were seeing was not someone acting out, but it was an actual symptom to an internal injury. I did run ambulance. I tried as professional as I could, from Temple Hospital to Nazareth to University of Pennsylvania to Jefferson. I think I stopped in Hammond once. Don't quote me on that, but over 7 different hospitals, multiple CAT scans, MRIs, sonograms, ultrasounds, nuclear tests, from hematology to pulmonology to GI to internal medicine to strictly my primary care. Everyone's sitting there scratching their head, and nothing was showing. And it was driving me up a wall. Like, it was literally like it was testing my balance of sanity. It was real. I literally felt like a foreign being on a planet. It was the literal definition of a twilight zone. Imagine not being able to go into a store because of the air, not being able to breathe into their whatever mask that I was trying to wear. Luckily, there was someone from FIGA who actually really helped me out, and I love you for that. And this guy actually, he had to put up with a lot of my stuff. I love him for it. He recommended the P95 masks, which dealt with particulates instead of N95, and it actually changed a lot. I was able to go into stores, or at least for a good 3 to 4 hours before I couldn't.
Who was the person that turned you on to that mask?
The gentleman. Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh gosh, I was hoping you weren't going to say that. Shoot.
Oh, don't worry, it'll come back to you.
Oh, that's horrible. Oh, and
No,
you know
no.
what? And he put up with me contacting him, and he would contact me, hey, how you doing? And it would be in all weird hours of the night. There were multiple people from FIGO and Friends of. I would not be here without you, without them, and I will forever be indebted. But let me move forward on this. So, having to get up, having to eat baby food, because that was the only thing I was able to kind of stomach. I wasn't able to take a drink of water without my stomach overly cramping. It was a little scary. The meditation that I was trying to do, and it wasn't easy. There was a lot of times where a lot of Ostertongue, however you pronounce that, not being in balance, good human nature going awry. I forget the definition right now. Or Gawalt, forgive me.
Okay.
But I wasn't in line with day to day. I was literally just kind of, a lot of resentments come up, a lot of woe is me's instead of, hey, why don't we get through this? And there were some people who really called me out on it, and I love them for it. And I will never ever forget that. I had to put up a GoFundMe. From someone who was taught to stand on your own 2 feet, and you were looked down upon if you weren't. It really, whatever ego I thought I had got thrown to the wayside in a basket and got garbage disposal. And I'm thankful for it. Truly. It changed a lot inside of me. But in 19-degree weather, winds blowing, having only 2 blankets and a pillow and whatever else I could carry. I had 6 bags. I had to walk around, and it was embarrassing, but it was the only way I knew how to survive, because there was no one else I can get in contact with. There was no one in range to be, hey, listen, can I stay with you? I won't ask for food. I just need a corner to heal. I didn't have that capability. So I had to do it.
So you were outside. You were having to endure a lot of this outside in the winter.
Every day from 5 months until It was oh shoot, probably 8 months ago, 9 months ago. It's fairly recent. And but there was a black Muslim gentleman who had a van. His name was Michael. Ironically,
Mhm.
he drove past in Pennypack Park. This is back when you were able to before they put the barriers up. And he stopped, he parked, and he gets out of the car. He goes, "Where are you heading?" And to tell him, my response was, "I don't know." That was my answer. I don't know. He goes, "Well, how about this?" He goes, "Why don't you, get warm, come in the van with me?" And he goes, "We'll figure this out." He goes, "Why don't we go over to the laundromat?" I said, and as soon as I heard laundromat, oh, you got it. You see what's going on. It was like, a demon saying, "Come on, come the hell, come on." And I was like, he goes, "Well, how about this?" He goes, "We'll give it a shot. If it doesn't work, not a problem." He goes, "I'll drop you off over where you were heading." Okay, fine. We go in. I was able to stand it. I was able to hold on to it. The
Wow.
fumes that were normally coming from that laundromat from literally blocks and blocks away that I had to dodge, going around other blocks just so I could breathe, I was able to handle it. I don't know if I remember you sent an email about saying mucus, you know, let the mucus kind of do its thing. And I really think that truly did a tremendous amount of me withstanding. As soon as that happened, I literally basically just stripped down to my skivvies and threw them in the wash. And I was like, "Oh, let me get right. Let me get clean, please." And it was an everyday thing for about 4 or 5 months. I ended up hanging with this guy Mike. I had from the GoFundMe, I was able to withstand some food, and some of the basic things that I was trying to keep. I couldn't go in any hotels. I tried. I tried. The smoke, the cigarette smoke, to even the non-smoking that was overly clean. I couldn't do it. And sure enough, then all of a sudden, I had some coin. I ended up uh, getting a vehicle. I nothing big. It was 95 Volvo. I still have it. And I lived in there for a moment. And the last day, literally the last day of me having to be there, because I ended up finding a place. And cop knocks on the window. Doof, doof, doof. "Welfare check. How you doing?" I'm like, "Huh?" I'm thinking, out of this whole time, I didn't deal with any police officers whatsoever. Now, you had to, and I said, "Officer, I'm fine." I had, my legs were at the time the size of tree trunks, just from the circulation issues. My veins doubled in size. I ended up getting a turkey neck from this. I literally aged dramatically within 1 year because of this. And yeah, I had my left leg up in the moon roof at the moment, kind of like propped up. I'm sure I look like a pretzel to the guy. And I'm like, "No, officer, I'm fine, not a problem." I said I was sleeping at this point. "Thank you for waking me up." He doesn't know what troubles I'm going through. He just sees a guy in a vehicle, in a Pennypack public park where technically I'm not really supposed to be there. But it was the only it was cold. You know what I mean? He wasn't going to be that guy. And he let me go. He goes, "Hey, listen, just pull the car into the parking lot over there." So I'm like, "Yeah, sure, no problem." And at that point, I just moved. I literally left the whole park. I was so embarrassed. Pulled off into the street and just kind of slept up onto the shoulder there, until I ended up getting a place. I went back to my old employment. I worked over at a vape shop. His cousin, ironically, his big shop, they needed someone at that point, and I was actually the person to bring e-liquid over into the Northeast region via brick and mortar. I was that guy. And there was a gentleman named Ronald, who actually educated me about it beforehand, and neither here nor there. I had a lot of knowledge on that, so I ended up doing that and just kind of fell back into that swing. He knew about my illness. I was completely upfront because I knew him and his cousin for over a decade plus. So they understood and kind of walked with me on this. I I truly and honestly would not have survived if it wasn't for the love and true humanity of Figu, the friends of. You would not have seen that anywhere else on the planet except here. Once again, solidifying, knowing without a shadow of doubt, besides the personal experiences from seeing that variation two craft that you showed in that black and white photo. I saw it on a SEPTA bus in between Ron Street. I was on Ron Street in between Busman and Roosevelt Boulevard looking northbound. There was 8 people on the bus, Mike. I was reading the information on the bus and I had an impulse to stand up and walk to the back of the bus. I walked to the back of the bus, Mike. I put my stuff down. My left leg hits the seat. I look up. There it is. Buildings are going from right to left around 40 miles an hour, and it's there looking like liquid metal. Polished chrome would not do it justice, Mike. It was gorgeous. For 7 seconds, my stomach felt like I hit the big drop on a roller coaster. Not scared, just that full excitement of it's there. Not a light. It's like you see a Lamborghini, you know it's a Lamborghini. You see a Corvette, you know it's a Corvette. I saw a variation too, without question. And my I picked up out of my right pocket the phone, and I shouldn't. I didn't put a thought back to him like, "Hey, could I take this photo?" And I looked down at the phone, hit camera. I look up, brick building goes from right to left, and it was gone. They gave me the gift of revealing themselves for that moment. They were able to. I'm sure they were able to obviously bend light to a quantum physics, and just let me see them for that moment, saying that you're on the right track, kid. And I'll never forget that.
Wow. Well, it sounds like we it's I mean, I know we've spoken over this period of time, but just hearing the story put together of what you've gone through and more after that, and
Sure.
you're surmounting things. We go back to the videos showing in the beginning of program of people in Italy, circumstances befalling people, and what befell you was really could have your life could have been over at any point, and the way you felt and all the circumstances, but you kept striving as well. And I just wanted to bring that word in,
Exact word,
right?
exact word that I was living on. That exact word I was living on, Michael. Ich lebe in Frieden, ich lebe in Gesundheit, ich lebe in Freude, ich lebe in Freiheit, ich lebe in Harmonie, ich lebe in Lieben. I live to this day. Them words come out of my mouth at least 20 times a day. And it's
There you were.
truly
There you
a
are.
mantra. With that and the Salome mantra, for lack of a better word, the yes, Salome Gamna Ben Warda Ganibara Sala Hesperona, every day, and I it it truly, there were times where I would feel pulses or burns that literally would slowly just kind of disappear. To say it's completely gone, no, but I got 90% of me back. And I definitely look different, but that's okay because my inside is different too. My spirit, I know
Right.
I have grown. And you know what? Any type of vehicle that's been through tried and true, whether it be a tank or what have you, anytime it's been through something tough, it'll have scratches on it, but that inside, can't take that experience away. You cannot. And truly and honestly, I'm very, very, very thankful that my life has pushed me to you and to Edward and truly into Figo and the friends of. I've had people who I never thought I would ever meet, judgments that I've naturally had that disappeared, to to people that have um, that I'm hoping to help change. You know what I mean? It's funny. These days, with media and everything, they try to, try to push the division. It's, it's funny. The faster people understand that it just because of what one person thinks of doesn't mean they're characters, doesn't mean that they're a bad person. It's just because of what experiences they've had in that life. You can't fault them for that. It's not fair. But if you can understand them as knowing that they're just human beings just trying to get through from one day to the next, not understanding that the truth is now on this planet, we are very lucky to have this in front of us. Very, very lucky. And
Yeah.
it's my sole duty, to do as best as I can, to follow through on a solemn promise that I've made, um, here and there, to the next person. If they take it, great. If not, great. Doesn't mean I'm going to love them any less.
Yeah.
I'll leave it.
William, uh, you're hitting on so many things. I wanted to tell people who don't know, FIGU is the organization of volunteer, people who support Billy, the core group in Switzerland, 3940 or so people, and people who around the world study the material and choose to be what are sometimes called passive members. There's no requirement really to join anything, but people find themselves drawn to it so they can work more closely with other people near them around the country, around the world. And once a month, there is an online meeting of people and people can write to me or come to the blog and they'll be able to find that information. And you are, a poster boy for the whole evolution of connections and what this has meant. And I do want to emphasize that so many people that find themselves in these positions of challenges, severe challenges in life, they, in my opinion, are much better prepared, can be much better prepared to go through, to view, to have an even slightly transcendental viewpoint about circumstances at times that they otherwise might not, as and when they familiarize themselves with Billy's material, The Way to Live, The Might of the Thoughts, many of these books, which are, of course, all over, the bookstore. So this is, I think it's enormously important that you've got a chance, as somebody who's taken a rather unusual journey here in terms of intensity and challenge. You know, uh, uh, years ago, I was on the streets for a while myself. I never suffered the additional challenges of illness or injury or anything. And I viewed it, to me, it was an adventure that I thought, I'm going to get out of this someday, because I didn't have also the additional psychological, physical burdens and all. And I had certain things that I'd studied that got me through it at the time. And then to find the teaching and to realize how deep the material is. And, I don't have to tell you, and there's a lot of people I don't have to tell, but I want to voice it and say it. And I want to thank you for coming on and telling your story, abbreviated as may be. People can get a sense, I think, pretty good sense that you've been through something, and many somethings, and of many different flavors. And you continue to strive, learn, had the right attitude, endured, and now you have come out of the dark valley, so to speak.
Very much. Very much.
Yeah. So I will say thank you very much. We'll stay in touch, of course. And, people are free, certainly, please, to comment. And you will see the comments, of course, once this is posted. We will, be glad to know how people feel about and, learning about your own personal journey and travails and trials. So with this, I will say to everybody, I thank you for tuning in. I'm glad that we had this unusual type of a show tonight. we're going to be visiting with many people over the course of weeks who have different stories to tell in different ways and shapes and forms, who are basically connected to this material through their own choice, through their own study. So, William, thank you very much. I say salome to you. And yes,
love you, brother.
Peace. Yes. And to everybody out there, we look forward to seeing you next week.